anywhere in the world and ask people, what does it take to be successful? And what people will tell you is that you need to learn something. You need to go to university. You need to find something in school. So that's the question I want to ask this morning, is what does it take to become successful? So there's a picture of someone standing on a peak. I want to talk about peak performance and what that actually does look like. But perhaps you want to answer yourself the question, what has been your understanding or perhaps even your misconception of what success looks like and what it takes to get there? Most people in the world will tell you that to become successful, you've got to start with competence. There are 4 elements to competence that most of us are not even aware of. The first of those elements is talent. So if you think about the work of Marcus Buckingham, where he talks about your strengths, he basically says that talent is your raw material. It's the thing that you're born with. And you know, interestingly enough, most people become good at something that is not aligned with their talent. So talent is one of the things that could lead to competence, but it's not the only thing. There's also skill involved. So just consider those people who've become really, really good and successful at what they're doing. If they have a talent, let's say Steve Jobs had a talent for visualizing and thinking up new ways of doing things. He had to actually add some skill to that talent. So you add skill, then the talent becomes commoditized. It's something that gets value for you and others. But that's not all. When it comes to competence, there's also a thing called knowledge. And knowledge is not necessarily the thing you get in the classroom. I'm sure most of you here will agree that you've learned a lot of things from just talking to people, watching a movie, a documentary, and just opening a magazine might have helped you to learn something. So knowledge is not confined to the perimeters of a classroom situation or a lecture room situation. So we're still talking about competence here. The other area of competence is experience. Interesting enough, once you add skill to your talent, you add knowledge to those two, then you start to gain what is called experience. And what experience does is it actually assists you in becoming more effective in your environment. But what you will notice here is that there's a number 3 on the screen for competence. Why am I starting with something that is only number 3? The question you should be asking now is, where's number 1 and 2? Okay, so the way the world has been set up is to convince us that if you do these things, if you build your talent, you add skill, you add knowledge and experience, you should become successful. So why is it that so many talented people, so many knowledgeable people, so many well-educated people have not risen to the levels of success that they have wanted for themselves? Well, you see, we miss vital information when it comes to life's journey and becoming effective in what we do. One of those things is our aspiration. You see, it doesn't help to have a qualification, but you don't know what to do with it. So we should really be starting with, what do you want? What is your vision? What is your long-term vision? Distill it down to medium-term, and then start asking yourself the details about the short-term vision. And most people just think this is something that happens haphazardly. You know, there's a very common old saying that says, without a vision, people perish. So vision is vital to our survival. Vision is vital to our ability to make something of ourselves and to be of use to others. But vision is not the only thing. There's also that idea of, why am I doing it? Okay, so we're still talking about aspirationally, how should we think? So with your vision, if you can add a why, then you're starting to talk about having a meaningful existence. So if you think about Viktor Frankl's work, where he was talking about the prisoners in the concentration camps during the Second World War, he said there were all these young people coming into the prison alongside older people. But what surprised him was that the younger people tended to die off quicker than the older people. And he was perplexed by this. And so, of course, as a psychologist, he started asking himself some questions. Why questions? Why is it that the older people seem to survive the harsh conditions of a concentration camp better than the younger people? And he soon discovered that the older people tended to have families, they tended to have children, wives, that they were separated from, and the thing which kept them going was the sense of purpose of wanting to get back to their families and making a difference to those people after the concentration camp experience. So that's very interesting information for us, because if aspirationally you just have a vision, that vision becomes empty if it's not combined with a sense of why. a sense of purposefulness. But that's not enough, because aspirationally we are also guided by principles and values, ideas of how we should live our lives. If we can just go back and go through the looking glass, and you have a look at how schools are set up, how the educational system is set up, how we convince people to become good at things in life, I think we're starting at the wrong place. I think we really should have more aspirational conversations around vision, values, purpose, and perhaps even mission. And then you can see that's area number 1. So now the question you should be asking yourself is, what's number 2? So number 2 really is that part where we teach ourselves how to master ourselves. We've all been there. We've been in situations where we've lost it. I'm from Johannesburg now, so the traffic in Johannesburg make people, literally, we've got incidences where people jump out of their car and shoot the next driver. Doesn't happen every day, so don't be afraid of Johannesburg. But the point is, these things have occurred. So ask yourself, in a traffic scenario, someone cuts you off, you're in a rush, you're trying to get to work, you've just maybe had an argument with someone at home, or your day is already not going well. So here you are in traffic and someone cuts you off, possibly a taxi driver. And you have 2 choices in that scenario. The first choice is lose control. But the second choice is maintain control. And so the way people master themselves as they go through life has everything to do with the output they get in their lives. So people who lose control a lot are generally not very successful people, or perhaps not very successful leaders. No one wants to be surrounded by a leader who has a loss of control all the time. So when it comes to self-mastery, we're talking about how do we respond when things go our way, and how do we respond when things don't go our way. But this also has to do with our motivation levels. You think about a person who has to wake up. I'll give you this scenario. On Mount Everest, before you set out from base camp to Camp 1, you've got to climb through a section called the icefall. The icefall is a moving glacier. It moves at about 2.5 centimeters a week, which is not that much, but it moves, and it's very volatile. And there are lots of crevasses, things, cracks in the mountain that you can fall right into. So the best way to survive climbing 14 hours through the icefall is to wake up at 3:30 in the morning. It's minus 35 degrees outside, and it's still pitch black because the sun hasn't come up yet. Now you imagine that scenario and tell yourself, I'm going to get up, put my climbing stuff on, and go climbing. It's not such a nice idea. I mean, I'm from here. I know PE people are not all morning people. But you see, what gets you up and what gets you going is to ask the question, why am I here? Which then brings you back to area 1, the why question. The vision is to get to the top of the mountain. You've got to do some things to get there. And then the question is, why am I doing what I'm doing? And trust me, out of all the high altitude expeditions I've been on, this question comes up every single time you climb. So now if you take that into a life scenario, why am I doing what I'm doing? May I suggest that you find an answer that satisfies you so much that there's no other why that pops into your head. It's only when we get a satisfactory answer to the why question that life starts to have some serious meaning. So people who master themselves, it turns out, are people with a strong sense of purpose, a strong sense of direction, a strong moral compass to their lives. They are far less likely to think of themselves as victims. They're far less likely to think of themselves as someone has to come and change my life for me. And so, can you see where the trend is? So now we're talking about aspirationally where we need to be. How do we need to master ourselves as we go through life? And then competence for me is it's area 3, because once you have the first 2 areas, then it's easy to decide how you want to qualify yourself for the things you want to achieve in life. So these first 3 areas are all about your internal. You are the person who gets to decide the quality of vision, the quality of purpose, the quality of self-mastery, and even the quality of education and qualification. But after that, you've got to step into an environment. And what that then encompasses is other people, systems, structures, rules, boundaries things that you might not have anticipated. So you see, a person with a low level of self-mastery and a low qualification level will step into an environment and immediately feel intimidated by it. A person without a strong sense of vision and why they're doing what they're doing will step into an environment and wait for others to tell them what and how to do. So the first three areas feed into area 4, which is environment. You cannot hold a person down with a strong sense of vision, a strong sense of purpose, and a strong sense of who they are and what they bring to the party. And environment now, we're such a diverse nation, but the world is becoming increasingly diverse. And you can see it. You can see those people who feel intimidated by how the environment is changing. We need to ask ourselves some serious questions about why people respond the way they do and where they fit in the first three areas. So as you can see, the first three areas of effectiveness, that's what they called, the 5 areas of effectiveness. So the first 3 areas all about working on yourself internally. Then you start moving out of that. And of course, most people would like to say they are opportunity seekers, not? So interesting enough about opportunity is when you ask people, are you an opportunist? Most people will say no. For some reason, there's a negative connotation to the idea of being an opportunist. Now, I know where this comes from. If you go onto Google right now and you click and you punch in opportunist, what you'll find is all the medical information on opportunistic diseases and parasites and those type of things. So perhaps that's why people don't want to be known as opportunists. But interesting enough, if you flick the question the other way and you say, how many of you want opportunity? All of you will put your hand up in this room. We are designed to look for opportunity. It's in our wiring. It's the way we are set up as human beings. Otherwise, people wouldn't get married. People wouldn't find jobs. People wouldn't buy a car. We are set up to look for opportunities. But the interesting thing about opportunity is that it's all over the place and only some people spot it. What's that all about? Have you ever had someone say, how did you become so lucky? Or you maybe have said to someone, that's amazing, how did you get so lucky? So the interesting thing about opportunity, there's a lovely quote that says, luck is when opportunity meets up with preparation. Now the highly effective person, how do they prepare? They prepare by having a strong vision for their lives. They prepare by knowing why they're doing what they're doing. They prepare by mastering themselves on their journey through life, how to handle the good and the bad stuff. They prepare by equipping themselves with the right kind of qualification, skill, and knowledge. And then they set themselves up in an environment where one of 2 things may happen. One, you might be so good at knowing what you want that you spot an opportunity without anyone having to show it to you. The second thing that might happen is that you're so good at exhibiting your performance, your behavior in an environment where someone notices that and they come up to you and say, I know exactly where we can put you. There's a nice opportunity for someone like you. So you see, opportunity is not something that falls into one's lap. It starts with preparation, but it starts with a vital question, what do I want? Our sense of direction, our sense of purposefulness, and our effectiveness all starts with the question, what do I want? And what that then does is you get a view of life. If you think about the through the looking glass principle, you get a view of life, not as it is now, but as it could be. And it is so vital for us to think about it like that, because if we don't, what is the implication? We just get blown by the wind. Someone suggests something here, off I go. Someone suggests something over there, off I go. And so you and me, we have a responsibility first to ourselves to start working on the first 3 areas of our own personal effectiveness. And then it's not by luck that you then find yourself in an environment where you're effective. It's because you are personally doing something about it. But more than just work on ourselves, we need to find a way to communicate this kind of information to others. How do you get people to become more effective in whatever they choose to do with their lives? How do you get young people to become more effective? Get them to start asking the question, what do I want? What do I want right now? What do I want for my future? This is an interesting story, and then I'll finish it off there. It's interesting for me anyway, because it's my story. So when I was young, my grandmother here in Uitenhage had a very important impression on my life. You know, when Queen Elizabeth came down to South Africa, she was here in PE. It was a big story for my grandmother's generation. And in addition to that, Edmund Hillary, in the year that the Queen got coronated, she became from Princess Elizabeth to Queen Elizabeth, she became Queen. And in that same week, Edmund Hillary got to the top of Mount Everest. And so I grew up with stories of Edmund Hillary and Queen Elizabeth, you know, the mix of that news together. And so I started to be very aware of the idea that Everest can be climbed. So as a youngster, 6, 7 years old, for myself, I had an idea, a vision, a what do I want one day when I grow up. And that what do I want was, I would love to go and climb Mount Everest someday like Edmund Hillary. And interesting enough, if you go to Uitenhage now, it's not very different to when I grew up over there. Now all you need to do is transport yourself 40-something years ago and think about, in the heart of apartheid, how silly it is for a young girl to make a decision that she's going to climb Mount Everest one day. And yet on the other side of that looking glass, I'm looking back now, and I'm going, I have climbed Mount Everest, not just once, but twice. We went through a selection process. We had to climb a couple of mountains to see that we actually have what it takes. I had what it takes because I've been fantasizing about this idea for as long as I can remember. And eventually I became one of the first South Africans to set foot on that mountain. Now that's not an accident. And it's also not just by happenstance. I started with the question, what do I want? And then I equipped myself over and over and over time. Through outdoors experiences and so on, through various means, church, sports, and so on. And when that opportunity came, I saw it, spotted it, but it's not enough to just spot the opportunity. You've got to do something about it. And so the idea, the journey of continuous improvement is all about continuously trying to develop yourself in all of these 5 areas, because what you do is you get to the next level, you've got to ask again, what do I want? Why do I want it? And equip yourself as you go through. So for me, the journey of peak performance is not a destination. It's not a place where you arrive at the top of a mountain and there you are. It's about starting with the question, what do I want? And of course, thinking to yourself, where's the underlying stuff that I need to work on? And how's that going to work itself out into the external? So my final thought is that actually, all meaningful and lasting change starts first on the inside, and it works its way out into your performance. Ladies and gentlemen, I thank you.